Already 12 after the hour, according to my clock, to 10 after the next hour, wherever you are. For me, it's 9:13 right now. A very nice time of day to have this wonderful talk. And we will have one live presentation followed by 3 pre-recorded lightning talks. And we're going to ask questions of presenters from both the live and recorded talks at the very end all together. When you do ask your question, thank you so much for posting that information into the chat. When you do ask your question, please indicate the presenter or presenters you'd like to direct your question to, and we'll save all the questions till the end of the session. And you can also drop questions and continue the conversation in the chat in Whova. And so actually, this is a great follow-up to what Sawyer had to say. I was thinking that would happen in the community section of Whova. I've actually been to several Whova conferences before, so I feel like I should have a better answer to that. But if there's somewhere other than the community, I think you can also directly message people, which can be nice. But if anyone else has other suggestions for modes of engagement, please feel free to chime in. In terms of codes of conduct, the RDAP Summit organizers are committed to providing an environment where all attendees can participate fully in the program and activities without fear of harassment or discriminatory behavior, or just feeling like that was a bummer. Sorry, that was me. There's also a chat associated with the session. Thank you. That's perfect. Thank you, Tess. So there's a code of conduct helper available during this session, and they're identified as the code of conduct helper. And I actually don't know who that person is.
Emily is our code of conduct helper for the session.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for knowing. You can direct messages to them in Whova if you need assistance, and they can give you the code of conduct email address or the link to the incident report form if needed. All right, so I am thrilled to introduce to you today, as our first and live talk, Ruby McDougall from Ithaca SNR. She'll be speaking to us today about connecting the links, helping humanities researchers use the digital infrastructure.
Thank you. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, it looks great.
Okay, great. So this is a huge, unwieldy topic in many ways, but I will be talking today about humanities researchers and the digital infrastructure and how librarians can help facilitate this. I'm going to focus on one aspect in particular, which is the role that relationship building between librarians and humanities researchers can play in helping humanities scholars understand and therefore maximize the benefits to the digital research, the digital infrastructure. And help researchers make the connections between the steps to develop seamless end-to-end digital research workflows. I'm approaching this topic with 2 hats on. So the first is the hat that I wear as an analyst at Ithaca SNR, where I work in the research enterprise program area. And this is an area that's dedicated to examining how social, technological, political sort of processes and changes are impacting scholarly research. And within this, I'm involved in a number of projects related to research data and support needs across disciplines. The most pertinent of which is our recent exploratory research into data sharing in the humanities, especially in light of the OSTP memo and broader trends towards open data. We're examining what research data means in the humanities, how this idea is changing or being more widely adopted, and how humanities scholars are learning about data and learning how to share it. The other hat that I'm wearing for this talk is as a humanities scholar myself, and one who is a relative latecomer to digital humanities, and even a latecomer to thinking about my research in terms of data and in relation to data sharing. So I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Michigan in the Department of Asian Languages and Cultures. And my field is modern Chinese cultural studies, broadly speaking. And I conducted the first leg of my fieldwork for my dissertation from July to January 2019. So I returned coincidentally to the US 2 weeks before the pandemic began, which meant that I could not return back to China to finish my fieldwork and finish that dissertation. So in the summer of 2020, it became very evident that I would not be able to return to finish my fieldwork, and I had to switch course and basically begin a new project. And this project, I had to rely almost entirely on sources that I found through the digital infrastructure and just like online databases. And so I really switched methodologies and understanding just how to do research in this process. I also started a digital humanities certificate that I have since become delinquent in at U of M just due to time constraints. But through this, I learned just like the different results that search terms brought up through databases. And I started to think about how metadata impacts my research and my project, and just started thinking in terms of my research and data. So I think that sharing my sort of personal experience in this topic is helpful because it does exemplify a lot of the trends that emerged through my work on the topic at Ithaca. And so just bringing sort of the two hats that I wear into this topic is helpful because as I go through, I can also just introduce some personal anecdotes to where I lie in this schema. So I will leave my story at that and turn now to other sources that I'm drawing from for this talk. I spoke to 2 research data librarians about their experience working with humanities researchers and sent a number of questions and had really productive and thoughtful conversations. And I'm really thankful for their generosity in sharing their insights and sharing their time. These were Felicity Taylor and Matt Caruthers at the University of Ottawa and the University of Michigan, respectively. And I also have here 3 key texts of many that I have been reading and working with that have helped sort of frame this particular talk. I'm happy to share my ever-expanding Zotero library with anybody who might be interested. So of the many challenges that have emerged. So one of the questions that I asked Felicity and Matt were, what are some challenges that you encounter working with humanities researchers and basically what they're coming to you for? And many challenges, came up and we discussed quite a few, but I think 2 prominent ones that are really interesting because they speak to the sort of ever significant importance of human connection in making the digital infrastructure work. And these challenges are the scholarly habits and intellectual hierarchies in the humanities. And then the second one is staffing and capacity in libraries. So today I'm going to talk primarily about the first challenge. and 4 key points that contribute to this challenge. And I'll also talk about how librarians can work to address these points. And in doing so, they can help prepare humanists to maximize the benefits of the digital infrastructure. So these 4 sort of key themes that emerged when we were talking about the challenge of the scholarly habits and intellectual hierarchies in the humanities are as follows. So the first is that humanists, myself, until I switched dissertation topics, very much included in this, are often unaware of the intellectual labor involved in data management. The second is that the humanities scholarship is traditionally a solitary endeavor. The third is standardization and cleanliness is at odds with humanities research, just sort of fundamentally. And the fourth is that humanists are often suspicious of computational methods and fearing that they will be reductive and sort of erase the difference in the diversity in their research. So I'll go through just each point and bring up some ideas that emerged in both the literature and in the interviews that librarians can do to help alleviate or mediate some of these points that contribute to the challenge of shifting scholarly habits and intellectual hierarchies in the humanities. So the first one, humanists are often unaware of intellectual labor involved in data management, is something that we could dedicate probably a week to discussing. But both librarians that I spoke to mentioned that when humanities scholars come to them for help, they often come with data they've already collected, and it's sort of just this giant mess, and they hand it over and assume that that something will happen with it. Really not understanding the intellectual labor involved in doing all of that processing. And this is in large part due to sort of this longstanding and recently discussed attitude that humanists don't work with data, and that the intellectual work of the humanities happens during the interpretation of the data by turning it, or the interpretation of sources, really by turning this into a critical essay. And so there's really a large gap in understanding the critical intellectual work involved in collecting data, asking the research questions of the data, processing the data, and how it will be shared. And really thinking critically about all of this and about what organizing and sharing data means is a crucial skill that humanists, broadly speaking, really still need to learn. So focusing on explaining this is one step in moving humanists towards more integrated, seamless workflows. And to do this, ideally, librarians will work with humanists from the beginning of the research project and demonstrate the need for careful attention to early data creation processes. But as we know, this is often not the case. And both librarians emphasized that even when humanists come with their sort of like laptop full of mess, there can still be the work of demonstrating the intellectual nature of thinking through organizing this mess. So these 4 points on suggestions to do this are emphasizing that metadata is really as important as the critical essay, and teaching humanists the idea that really you're explaining your choices and explaining your categories to the computer. So to teach humanists the function of metadata, which is to standardize, but that showing the choices that you need to explain is a way to have sort of the intellectual thinking about this data appear as you explain this to researchers with their laptop full of folders and other ways that their data is stored. So another thing is to start with an intellectual exercise and just think about why you are doing, what's the methodology for this research and for this data. So humanists often don't understand that there needs to be a methodology section when working with data. And so even just starting with this intellectual exercise of like what data and for what audience can help begin to explain the methodology section of what the data is and where it came from and what the choices are. And then build thinking critically about the metadata language into the research project, again, from the beginning. And then finally, spell out the steps. So introduce humanists to the entire scope of working with data, set up workflows for collecting, analyzing, publishing, and sharing, and storing. Just basically spelling out the steps involved in all of these things helps because the more scholars can see the steps and the choices and the decisions involved in these, for example, choosing the metadata language, the more evident the critical thinking and the decision-making becomes, and the less different working with data becomes from the work of a critical essay. And emphasizing the need for documenting the choices and the processes and how these choices relate to their field and the research in their field, documenting the idiosyncrasies in their choices, and the sort of tools that they use can, again, help just emphasize the steps and the critical thinking that's involved in making all of these choices. So the next point is that humanities scholarship is traditionally a solitary endeavor.
So we've hit time. Do you want to take just 2 minutes to wrap up? Because we're already
Sure. Yes.
All right.
Yes. I'm sorry. So here, the important thing would be to get excited, let them know they're not alone, and really highlight that this is not a solitary endeavor, because really the work of both research, the critical essay, and the data management is way too much for one person. And so give examples of co-authorship and just highlighting the team and building in funding for the team from the beginning. The third is that standardization and cleanliness is at odds with humanities research. So really, I would say the first two are super important here, which is to emphasize to humanists that there is actually no such thing as clean data, so they don't need to be afraid of that as a concept that goes against their ethos, but also as a concept that goes against their data, because there's data anxiety among humanists, and so they often run from it because they think there is no way they will ever be able to clean their data. So emphasize that that's okay. And then the fourth is to prioritize methodological transparency, which I mentioned. So this is my last slide. Helping humanist scholars engage with the digital infrastructure is not only a question of technical tools, and I focus today more on the idea that strengthening their understanding of the conceptual steps is key. And I welcome any questions or comments at the end of our talk. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Ruby. As a fellow humanities PhD, I am really excited to talk more about this at the end and have lots of questions. So thank you so much. If you,
Hello, my name's Lisa Connor, and I'm here to share with you pathways for engagement of an R2 campus with the All of Us Researcher Workbench. What I hope you'll get out of this session is awareness of what the program is and why it's important to librarians and data professionals. You'll learn more about the program data and how it uniquely supports researchers at an R2 minority serving institution. You'll learn some of the pathways I've taken to engage faculty at my institution, and you'll finally get a list of some resources that you can follow up on. So I think it's important for librarians and data professionals because of the variety of data that you can explore and share across multiple disciplines. It's been great for my scholarship because I've earned 2 grants and I've been an invited speaker, and I've had accepted posters and presentations, and even had an invitation to publish an article in a peer-reviewed journal. It's a great conversation started with faculty and students to build your relationships across campus. It's been fun to start conversations, and you just start describing the program and ask what they do. And I've found before you know it, the faculty or students are asking for more information. It's helped me learn new skills in data management, open science, and coding. And I've had some very wonderful surprises. I was accepted and invited to attend the Train the Trainer event in New York City in April. And I recently was awarded a pilot program from the National Library of Medicine, supporting the engagement of libraries with this data set. So the program is unique because it has 1 million participants across the lifespan. It considers biology, environment, and lifestyle, includes electronic health records, and it also includes biosamples and bioassays. So for example, if you participate by providing DNA, that DNA will be analyzed and a genetic counselor will share the results with you and discuss the implications of any health concerns from the DNA results. The program also collects survey data. For example, during COVID, they surveyed folks on different parameters to see how they were coping during the pandemic. It also contains physical measurements like height and weight and mobile health data from tools like Fitbits. It's incredible the amount of participants so far. There's already 429,000 that have completed the entire profile and registration. There's incredible outreach across the United States with more than 100 funded partner organizations and 680 sites collecting samples and measurements. Geographically, it's well dispersed across the United States, but they're adding more sites to get more balanced representation from the different states. It's incredibly diverse in race and ethnicity, with more than 50% racial and ethnic minorities represented, and more than 80% of underrepresented in biomedical research participants are there, and folks that have not been represented before. Here's a quick look at the data methodology. You can explore it at this link for more information. Now, there's 3 levels of access to the data. There's a controlled tier, a registered tier, and a public tier. I suggest going to the public tier that you can openly look at all the different data and learn a lot about the program. The controlled and registered tiers require a data use and registration agreement. So why does it support R2 and minority serving institutions? I think because it has such a diversity of data and participants and researchers. So there's multiple levels of support and funding as well coming from the NIH, opening up opportunities for minority researchers. It provides a terrific environment for collaboration and promoting interdisciplinary research, has incredible resources with a support hub, help desk, tutorials, and training modules. There also is going to be new data coming with the Precision Environmental Health Study and Precision Nutrition Health Study. You can explore more about the projects by going to their very transparent and open projects directory, where there's nearly 4,300 ongoing projects. So how did I engage with my campus? I'd say learned about the program, and when grant opportunities I spotted, I just went for it and was fortunate to get them. Connect with your Office of Research. I did, and they helped institute put into effect the data use agreement. I also have the team over there willing to support any meetings for collaborative efforts across the campus. I would say attend campus events and trainings wherever you can, and just listen and talk to as many people as you can. Ask them what their research is. Tell them about the program. When you see them again, listen and talk again about it so they start to understand more about it. I participated in interprofessional working groups, IT trainings, faculty development workshops where I met and discussed the program with different faculty. Also met with deans and department chairs. My next steps are to develop a plan of action with the Associate Dean for Research, complete the LibGuide, and develop a campus research study for the use of the workbench. So here are some additional resources you can look at and follow up with, and I look forward to your questions. Thanks for your time and attention.
Organizations around the world have curated web archive collections, which preserve critical and ephemeral information from the web. Collections can consist of a variety of data formats, all of which feature born digital data. Although web archives can be a rich data source, they often present significant access and use challenges, often due to their format and scale. Over the past 5 years, the Archives Unleashed project has engaged with scholars and more recently collaborated with the Internet Archive to tackle the acute challenges and barriers researchers encounter when conducting research with web archives at scale. In addressing the technical complexities and burdens researchers often face with research data, our project has created tools, including the Archives Unleashed Toolkit and the Archives Research Compute Hub, to generate datasets from web archive collections. Ultimately, these datasets provide approachable research objects for in-depth scholarly inquiry. Supplementary to our tool building efforts, our team has delivered 2 iterative cycles of a mentorship program that's been designed to facilitate intensive research engagement with web archives, foster a community of users, and cultivate a broad spectrum of research use cases. The Archives Unleashed cohort program has engaged with 46 interdisciplinary researchers from 21 institutions across 9 countries. The program is a year-long collaborative process where 5 research teams use web archives as a primary data source to investigate wide-ranging research topics and questions. During their time in the program, participants receive mentorship from members of our team and field experts. We also host events to encourage peer-to-peer support and knowledge sharing. As we reflect on the RDAP conference theme of centering communities in data creation and access, I'd like to highlight the ways in which a mentorship program has cultivated an environment that empowers solutions for expanding access, exploration, and engagement of research data. If you can't access data, you won't use it, and this is a challenge felt across disciplines. Since our program saw international participation, bridging the gap between research teams and data that would support their research questions was a critical first step. In partnership with the Internet Archive and in collaboration with specific Archivit partners, cohorts were given read access to web archive collections, which were then analyzed through our Arch platform. So building these relationships and these connections was essential given the wide range of access to data that each team had. In some instances, teams belonged to institutions with already curated web archive collections that they were interested in exploring, while others opted to conduct research on collections curated by Archivit partners. The cohort program really highlights this initial challenge that confronts all researchers, and it's where do I find the data needed to investigate my research topic, and how can I access that data? Now, the majority of researchers participating in our program were new to working with web archival data, and they also had limited experiences using large-scale analytical methods. Our project members have actively worked to create an environment where users feel comfortable and confident in exploring web archives, with a focus on skill building and knowledge sharing. So we regularly use our one-on-one meetings with groups to address technical challenges, share resources, as well as consult on analysis strategies. We've also hosted different types of events and spaces to support peer-to-peer learning. And so by empowering users to explore data in new ways, whether it's new methods, tools, or approaches, researchers could really explore and use their data in meaningful ways. As cohorts were required to explore one or more Web Archive collections, we supported the engagement between researchers and collection curators. For researchers, this has been a valuable experience in gaining contextualized knowledge. And we've also seen a very genuine curiosity and invested interest by Archivist partners to see how their collections are being incorporated into research. It's also been a rewarding experience for our project team to help bring more visibility to institutional collections, highlighting not only the specific collections that are being investigated, but also showcasing the possibilities of Web Archives research through different use cases and then sharing those results with broader communities. And so it's through our community engagement activities, we hope to inspire and spark the curiosity of others to use Web Archives as a data source for their research. And so as we conclude here, I circle back to the conference theme and suggest that a mentorship model in combination with adopting strategies that are rooted in community engagement and research support can cultivate opportunities in which we can increase and expand data access, use, and engagement for a broader range of communities. Thanks.
You all, this was such an exciting and interesting session. I got a different message from someone saying that they wanted to talk bibliometrics with me. I would love that. So I'm gonna respond. Maybe I'll post something on the community board. Thank you all. I feel really inspired to start for the rest of this conference. I think it's gonna be fantastic. All right, and I'm gonna hand over to the next people.